And we're going to play a little music as per usual. And we're going to get into today's topic. All right. I have some proprietary business to deal with first, dealing with yesterday's live stream. But first, I'm going to put on a little music, if you don't mind. And my voice is a little scratchy, which means time to hydrate. People know how I do now. I'm pretty sure most people are familiar with me drinking a bit of water during my streams to save my voice. And I'm a little, well, parched. So again, apologize in advance for if I my voice goes in and out. Um, now, I think I should take this light off to, although it reduces shadow, it's putting a glare on me, and I'll have to face a certain way just to make it feasible. And I'm going to move around, so that's not going to work. So I'm just going to turn this light off and leave the other ones on. So, addressing yesterday's live stream. So, yesterday I knew was going to be a contentious conversation, talking about why a lot of modern women are delusional because they've been socialized to believe they have limitless options when it comes to um, their careers, their relationships, and their privilege. And that's simply not the case. Let me adjust this chat filter here as well. Um, Tonight I'm striving for 20 likes. What's up, Rafi? So, and hello everyone else in the stream. So, um, let's get those likes up if you guys don't mind. Again, my name is Just A Contrarian, um, or you can call me Mr. Contrarian or just J.A.C. Doesn't matter. It's all good. Um, if people want to contribute to my live stream, you can do so through super chats or the super stickers or the gems. But this topic is going to be two parts. So the first part is going to address my live stream from yesterday. So if you haven't seen that, watch this, and then you can go back to that live stream from yesterday. Okay. And then the second part of this live stream is going to talk about um, some of the some of the folks in the passport bro movement who are a bit delusional. So yesterday I concentrated on delusional women. Today I'm concentrating on delusional men because again, as I said yesterday, I'm not just a woman basher. I bash people who are delusional or um, don't are unrealistic. Okay. Um, I'm a rational person and I like to give people a healthy dose of skepticism. All right. So yesterday I was talking about why uh, a lot of modern women are delusional because they've been socialized to believe they have limitless options throughout their life, and that's simply not the case for them nor anyone else. There are always trade-offs in life. Okay. So and I wasn't trying again, I wasn't trying to be mean to women. I was just trying to be realistic. And I even talked about men a little bit in my last broadcast. And so I'm going to talk about men specifically in this broadcast after I get done with this proprietary business. So, um, I was addressing the fact that they have limitless options. And so I had a YouTube short 2 days ago where I addressed this in a comical fashion. And I said, some of these women in their 40s and 50s who still are looking for the right man. I was like, well, just keep holding on for a few more years and they will certainly reach the right man. And his name is Jesus. It was a joke. Um, and so one of my former moderators and someone who I took to be a friend, was like, well, um, she took she took the part about me talking about Jesus and completely missed the point of the YouTube short, which was talking about the how delusional it is to believe that you have options forever and you simply don't, right? And so I put myself in that place, right? So it would be delusional for me being in my late 40s to think now is the time for me to become a world champion kickboxer. No. Or, being that I'm an army vet that I can re-enlist and become a soft commando. Soft stands for special operations forces, right? um no, those windows have closed. Like if I wanted to pursue those things, that is something I should have started preparing for maybe around 30 years ago, right? So it would be delusional to think just because I want those things that I can still have those things at this stage of life. It's not realistic. It would be delusional. And in the same vein, I addressed that fact that women in their 40s and 50s thinking they still gonna find the right man is delusional, because it's not that they can't find a man. It's that they want a specific type of man, and in their age bracket, they no longer call the shots, and that's just a fact of the matter. Like in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, these women are no longer in the same have no longer have the same value in the sexual marketplace. And I gave a lot of credit to the late Kevin Samuels on these points that I've borrowed from him and other folks in the manosphere who've talked about this for the past 5 years, right? um and so so I had two of my one a former moderator and the other one a current moderator both addressing me on that. One because she's in that age bracket, so she felt slighted. The other one wasn't in that age bracket. She's still in her late 20s, but she is having an existential crisis. Okay, I'm not gonna go too specific into her into her personal stuff, but she's having health problems, and it seems that has brought on some sort of existential crisis in her life. And if people want to delve into religious faith to deal with tough times, I get it. I'm not going to knock anyone for their religious convictions, especially if it gives them comfort in a tough time. That was not my issue. My point was that you completely missed the point of what I was saying in that YouTube short, which was had nothing to do with Jesus. And I even said it doesn't matter if I'm talking about, you know, Allah, Buddha, Lao Shi, um, the Great Pumpkin. Like that's besides the point. The point is women don't have limitless options, but they've been socialized in Western society to think they do. And so I made this a whole live stream about this. One of my moderators, who's a guy, whom I also consider a friend, was like, "Well, guys do it too, right?" And I'm like, "Well, yes, they do, but this isn't about guys because that's that's going to get us off topic." I was like, "The point is." even when guys are delusional themselves, they are quickly put in their place and told no. And guys know that they don't have limitless options because they're not socialized to beliefs. They have them, but Western women are. And the whole concept of hitting the wall is when women realize that their options have dwindled, and there's a bit of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you hold. So for people who don't know what cognitive dissonance is, I'm not trying to use big words here. Cognitive dissonance is simply a concept in psychology and behavioral science, which is when people hold two contradictory thoughts in their mind at the same time. It causes cognitive dissonance, right? Um, and that's what happens when women hit the proverbial wall, is that they realize they no longer have the options they did in their youth when they were prettier and when more men found them desirable. And I had to put one of my, I had to speak candidly to one of my moderators and say, look, I'm sorry that you don't agree, but a woman in her 50s is not in her sexual prime. That is absolutely fucking absurd. Like no woman in her 50s is in her physical prime just because she has sexual urges. That doesn't make a bit of sense. uh, One, like many of them are facing menopause. You're not in your sexual prime when you are going through menopause. Two, you're not as sexually desirable in your 50s as you were around the age of 25, which is when most women hit their sexual prime, is like when they are around 24, 25 years old. So, um, and she thought I was women bashing. I was like, oh, I'm not women bashing. I'm being real. I'm trying to clarify something. And I was like, this comes from the red pill space. I was like, both of these two women, the moderator and the former moderator, are from overseas and seem to be quite um, unaware of the red pill space here online, which is where I staunchly plant my flag. I mean, what is called red pill is basically just men being men, but unfortunately, being masculine is now almost it's not it seems to have not been is abnormal being masculine now. So they've called it red pill. Fine. So I'm red pill. Um, but here's the thing: with my you know academic background, I can back up what I say. And so when I did this live stream, my former moderator came on and start harping on very morbid things, talking about being unalived, and kept saying, "Well, you could be unalive tomorrow." I'm not going to say the word that she used because, unlike her, who has a channel which she's had up for 3 years and still hasn't been monetized, I am monetized, and I realize certain words will get your streams or videos demonetized. So she kept using that word, starts with a D, um, ends with F, and like it's like chill. And I had to repeatedly say chill, and she kept going on about it, and she was just like crashing out. And it was like, look, the only one that can crash out on my live stream is me. But if you want to crash out, do that on your own platform. Like she has her own channel where she has music, and so if she wants to talk about human deletion and the fragility of life, do that on your channel, because I mean most of her music is melancholy anyway. So if it would fit the content of her channel, melancholy music, and you can talk about existential things dealing with the fragility of life and human deletion and how it could all end. And she kept trying to uh kept trying to derail my conversation by talking about these morbid things, and she took it sort of as a badge of honor that she harped on these things, and it was very weird. And as a friend was telling me earlier today, we were talking, you know, um, offline, that I seem to attract a lot of eccentric people to my channel because I apparently have given them what seems like a safe space on my channel to be themselves. That's going to change. Just like last year when I said once I get monetized, I'm only going to take relevant questions on my streams, which I've been doing for the most part, although I've let some exceptions slide. Going forward, also, I'm going to stop. I welcome everyone to my channel, but if you're gonna be weird, I'm gonna ask you to step off. Seriously, because it brings down the quality of the live streams when there's a bunch of weirdos, and that can be moderators or that can be people in the chat room. We're I'm gonna be less tolerant of weirdness. And with her, like I said, her fixation on passing away was off-putting, and she she took it as a badge of honor that she could coax me into trying to insult her. And I wasn't trying to insult her when I told her she needs to seek professional help. I think she really needs to seek professional help, because anyone who's fixating on on someone passing away, or just the very concept of being able to suddenly pass away, is dealing with stuff. And sometimes when you have critical health problems, it does also change how some people think. This is what we call psychosomatic illness. Um, so the term psychosomatic or psychophysical is often misused, even sometimes by physicians. So psychosomatic doesn't mean something that's all in your head. That's not what psychosomatic means. Somatic meaning body or physical. This is why it's sometimes called psychophysical illness instead of psychosomatic illness. A psychosomatic illness or problem tends to be um, psychological trauma or stress that accompanies medical illnesses. So that is what is how uh, in clinical psychology what psychosomatic actually refers to. So when you hear people saying psychosomatic to say, oh, it's just something in your head, that's not actually what that means. Usually when someone is talking about something that's all in your head, that's actually a different, the opposite problem. That's called a somatoform disorder. And I don't expect everyone to remember all this jargon. That's not even important. The issue is, again, sometimes when people are going through critical health problems, it also accompanies certain psychological stress, and that can trigger a meltdown. And I think she's having one, because she was definitely not like that last year. Um, and again, I asked her politely, a few times to, knock that off. But when you keep doing something after someone's like, please, like, stop, that's not really germane to my topic, it makes you think that this person is just intentionally trying to be an asshole. And it's, if this was any other person but a former moderator, I would just think they were just being a troll. But here, going forward, whether you are a friend or not, if you come into my live streams and you try to derail the conversation after after one or two warnings that please, stick to the topic unless you want to drop a super chat, then I am going to give you a 24-hour ban. And if it happens again, I'm just going to ban your username permanently. And if the person comes back under different usernames, I'm going to ban all those usernames, report all of them, and or switch my community moderation so that only subscribers can leave comments in the chat room. Okay, so this is the proprietary business I want to get through. Also, I'm going to address the content that, you know the very content that she was using at the times, because she kept saying, well, you could just pass away the next day. First of all, why are you fixated with the thought that I can pass away the very next day? Here's the thing: I'm in good health. You are not. Well, she is not, right? Um, the idea that I can pass away the very next day suddenly is a possibility, but it's not likely. And sometimes people who are bad at argumentation or just not very bright sometimes confuse possibility with probability. Just because something is possible doesn't mean it's likely to happen. And also, she was using a very weak form of possibility. So, again, be forewarned, I'm going to use a little bit of philosophical jargon, but I will explain what I mean. So, sometimes people will use mere epistemic possibilities. Epistemic meaning um, revolving around knowledge or belief. They will use a mere epistemic possibility as if it was a genuine possibility or a nomological possibility. Okay. Uh, when I say epistemic possibility, referring to like knowledge or belief, this is often when people will say, well, for all I know, or for all that we know, X, Y, or Z could happen. That is an epistemic possibility. It's a possibility, excuse me, it's a possibility veiled in ignorance, right? So a textbook example of an epistemic possibility is saying, well, for all we know, the other side of the moon could be made of blue cheese. Is it possible? Yeah, it's fictionally possible, but should we take that possibility seriously? No. Not only is it a not not only is it very unlikely to be true, but it's also a very weak possibility because there's no genuine physical possibility underlying it. Okay. So mere epistemic possibilities, or possibilities couched in the terms of for all we know, X, Y, or Z can be true, should not be taken seriously unless they are actually underlined through some sort of genuine thing that can actually happen. Okay. And then the other thing is she was like, well, it might happen. You may pass away, or this again, she didn't say pass away, she was using the D word for the ending of life. And again, I'm not going to use that because I don't want my stream demonetized. Again, she wouldn't know about demonetized because a she's never had her channel monetized yet. She's not a YouTube partner. And you would think someone who's had a channel for 3 or 4 years should have been monetized by now, especially when you have hundreds of hours of music videos uploaded to your channel. You're doing something wrong. Anyway, I'm not I'm not trying to roast her, but I'm gonna address yesterday because it was off putting. Um, so another thing is like when you say, well, it can happen or it might happen, maybe it'll happen. These words like maybe, might, can, could, these are called modal terms in logic. Modal terms refer to things dealing with necessity and possibility. Okay. Which links back to what I'm talking about when I said epistemic possibilities. Um, the thing is, these are perfectly, you know, these are perfectly good terms to use when dealing with the uncertainty of of some event. We can say, well, X might happen, Y may happen, Z could happen, but again, those possibilities only should be taken seriously insofar that they're underlined by a genuine possibility. But often, people who try to make bad arguments will use these terms disingenuously and talk about, well, for all we know, you might get your butt beat. um, for all we know, you might just suddenly pass away tomorrow. Yeah, it can happen, but there's no There's no good reason to believe it's going to happen just because there's a very weak possibility that it can happen. So when modal terms like may, might, can, and could are used in a disingenuous way, these are called weasel words, and these are often used by people making bad arguments, either because they're not clever enough to make a better argument, or because they're trying to, or because they're trying to push a certain idea forth that can't be held up on its own petards. So they have to use weasel words. Well, you might pass away tomorrow. Yeah, okay. But I'm in good physical health. I don't live somewhere dangerous. I don't have a hazardous job. Um, my environment is relatively clean. Um, there's no relevant known factors which would impinge on my livelihood. Okay. So that makes that possibility a very weak fictional possibility. Every possibility shouldn't be taken seriously. And there are very many different ones, which we don't have to go into. But, briefly, like I said, you got genuine metaphysical possibilities. Okay. You have physical or scientific possibilities, right? You have um, things that are conceptually possible, by, basically we can think it. These are a very weak form of possibility. You have logical possibilities, which are basically matters of just um, syntactic form, being able to string together like a syntactically coherent possibility. Okay. Um, and you have fictional possibilities. Many of these epistemic possibilities that people can think of are merely just fictional possibilities. So again, some people are going through things in their life and it leads them to act in a way that is a bit off-putting, and that's what's it seemed like it's happening with her. Hope she gets it straight. But again, it wasn't an insult to say that she needs professional help. She does. Like, just like we need help with our medical problems, people need help with their psychological problems. And there seems to be some adjoining psychological problems with her medical problems, whatever those medical problems may be. So that's where I will leave it. But I will say that if someone comes here anytime going forward trying to intentionally derail my conversation or intentionally misconstruing what I'm saying, I'm just going to give them a 24-hour ban. And if it continues happening over a series of live streams, they'll just get a username permanently removed. All right. So I think that's enough of the house business. So we're about to go into the second part of this live stream. So the other thing I wanted to address is, like yesterday I talked about delusional women, and I said that the reason I call a lot of Western women, modern Western women, delusional is because they've been socialized to think they have unlimited options, and no one has unlimited options. Neither guys nor gals have unlimited options at any stage in their life. um, Let me try to focus right here. See how's that, guys? Well, leave me some likes too if you guys don't mind. But so we talked about delusional women. They don't have limitless options. and that when they hit the proverbial wall, usually around the age of 35, is when they realize that some of those options have dwindled for them. They're not as pretty as they used to be, not as slender as they used to be, not as friendly as they used to be because some of them have emotional baggage, or or if they don't have emotional baggage, they have other sorts of baggage. They have children. They expect another man to clean up behind what other men did and step up as stepdaddies. No. Um, they come with a sordid past because they were promiscuous in their youth, and now after riding the cot carousel for 20 plus years, they expect a man to just be ready to settle down with someone who's damaged goods. I'm sorry, but most guys don't want to play someone else save the game. To put this in gamer parlance, some of you gamers out there know what I'm talking about. No one wants to play another person save the game. Or you have some that, did everything right when they were younger, but things didn't work out. And that just happens. Sometimes you get married and it doesn't work out. And so they put themselves back in a dating pool, but it's different now. Like it's 10 years hence forward since they left the dating pool. Now they're back. They don't have the same desirability in that dating pool as they did 10, 20 years ago. Um, or you had some that put off a relationship for a career. This happens way too often in the black community with black women. They will put off relationships for the purpose of building a career. I get it. And there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is believing you still have the same dating options now in your 40s and 50s that you did when you were in your 20s. You don't. Um, then you have others who, you know, came out of some bad relationships and decided to be abstinent for a number of years and and will tell a guy that they're not giving up the cookie until they marry them. And it's like, ma'am, you are in your 30s, 40s, or 50s. Ain't no one sitting there waiting for you to give up. There's no one marrying you to get the cookie when it's already used goods. It's not brand new out of the box. It's not. This is not mental and card cha cha. Okay, this is a used good that you put back in the box, and now you want someone to pay the same sticker price for it for a brand new. Mm-mm. Um, you're not getting the MSRP on a used car. Okay, so this is the delusions of these ladies. Now we're gonna talk about some delusions of some guys, and I'm gonna couch this specifically in the passport bro movement because I've seen way too much stuff, and I've actually had to leave quite a few groups and unfollow a few um, YouTubers because of the stuff that they say or the stuff that they promote. And so this is me being fair. So I've talked a lot about the women yesterday. I'm gonna talk about the men today. Um, these guys, and like I said, some of them I've unfollowed or left the groups they have on Facebook because a lot of them give men, especially younger men, bad advice. Like they're jaded, and so they bring that sort of mindset with them when they come overseas. Like they're old, they're fat, they're divorced, and so they have that baggage with them when they come overseas. And you know, no one's going to begrudge their choices, but it's the fact that they're trying to make their limited choices into options for all men. The biggest example of that is some of these guys go overseas, and again, they're jaded for whatever reason, and they think it's perfectly okay to date sex workers overseas. And I find that patently absurd. Why would you travel 5, 6, 7, 8,000, almost 9,000 miles overseas to date a sex worker? And some of these guys will say, and I'm not going to mention any of their names, but these are prominent YouTubers and stuff like that within the Passport Bro movement. That's all I'll say. And someone will say, well, it's you know, it's better with the pros overseas than the women back home. I'm like, that's crazy. I was like, yeah, because you're old and fat. And again, I'm I might I may or may not be addressing a specific person, but if you know, you know. If you don't, but if you're old and fat, like you're in your 50s, you're fat, you're divorced, and you're telling other guys, it's perfectly okay to date a bar girl in Thailand or in the Philippines or where other Vietnam, Cambodia, Colombia, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, you have problems. Okay, again, not every guy traveling overseas is a loser. It's like the very stereotypes that these men who travel want to dispel about themselves, these guys are kind of reinforcing by the stuff that they say, even though they disagree with it. It's sort of like, so it's sort of like in the black community where we get mad when people outside of the black community talk about how black people talk a certain way or act a certain way. So we get mad when people outside of the community say it, but then we'll say it to each other though. So we'll make fun of the black guy who's articulate, call him corny or trying to sound in white. The guy who's you know is interested in academic topics, or he likes stuff like comic books and Dungeons and Dragons, or you know collecting rocks, stuff like that. Like, yes, I am talking from personal experience, but and they'll say, oh, he's corny, he's trying to be white, um, all these goofy things. Meanwhile, if a non-black person has said those very things, they'd have been up in arms, ready to fight. But they'll say it about each other, and it doesn't even end when you get older. Like, it's still adults saying this to other black adults, which is crazy. So in that, so likewise in that vein, in this travel movement, in this passport travel movement, you have these guys who will be up in arms when women and sometimes men back here in the States or in the UK, um, or in Canada will call these guys losers or um, sexpats for going overseas to find better relationships. But these same guys who get mad when people not part of the passport travel movement say that will also say the only purpose for them to be going over there is to be doing those very things. And if you're not doing those very things, you're not really a passport bro. So if you're not really going over there trying to smash as much as you can, you're not really a passport bro. You're still a plantation bro. Okay. So saying that there's absolutely no other better motives for traveling just to other than to get foreign booty. Like, mind you, all the millions of other things you can do overseas. And I'm calling out people like Flight Madness for stupid shit like that. He's a fucking retard, and I'll say it right here, right now. His whole YouTube channel about him living in China, he is he is a jaded person, and I suspect it's because he was a cornball back in the United States. Uh, and if you disagree with him, he'll call you plantation bro and say you don't travel. Mind you, I've traveled. I was traveling before him, and I've already found someone. So it doesn't apply to me, but he'll try to use that. Plus, I called him out for wearing military gear, looking like a fake Black Panther, like wearing a maroon beret, those which is what airborne, Army airborne assault troopers, paratroopers, wear, and wearing, other sorts of military uniforms with the badges and stuff on it. Like you look like a cornball, and it looks like stolen valor. And he just looks goofy. So I'm gonna call him. I'm not calling out any other passport bro folks, but I'm gonna call him out because he's a fucking goofball. Um, and he's one of those people who promotes degenerate behavior. This dumbass got the clap in Pattaya, Thailand, the largest international red light district in the world for sex tourists. And he's raw dogging Thai hookers and tries to normalize and say, guys, don't act like this hasn't happened to you. No, that doesn't happen to most of us, except for ignorant sex tourists who would raw dog Thai hookers in the most notorious location for sex tourism in the world, where there's a high incidence of AIDS. And you're raw dogging Thai hookers. You're a moron. Um, and then being living in China, like he shills for them, and he doesn't. He tries to get away with saying, well, all the stuff that affects China doesn't really affect where he stays. It only affects the locals. First of all, that's not a flex to say that you live somewhere where everyone else around you lives in misery, but you don't. That's not really a flex. Second, even if that is true, if you step out of line, it can happen to you. And so his retort is, well, most people coming to that part of the world aren't that important. That's again, that's not a salvo. That's a that's a that actually reinforces why that's so dangerous. If you're not that important, that means you can be quickly taken care of if you step out of line. You only have all you have to do is offend a local, and they go to someone who's um, a local politician in the CCP, and that is your ass, Mr. Postman. So for a long time, with the advent of the passport bro movement, one of the people who became the face of it was the young brother Austin Holloman. I've said some mean things about him, but I'm not going to say those here. One thing I will say is I understand why people in the black manosphere wanted him to be the face of the passport bro movement because he looks like a well-adjusted person, which is what you cannot say for a lot of these other folks in the passport bro movement. Again, Flight Madness looks like a fucking weirdo walking around in berets. Like the dude walks around in berets. Who the fuck in America walks around in a fucking beret if you're not in the army? And even people in the army only wear their berets when they're on duty. They don't walk around with it in on this like when they're just wearing their civilian clothing. It's weird. So obviously he wasn't gonna be the face of the passport bro movement. These other guys weren't as well because again, I don't judge men by their looks, but these weren't guys who are gonna sell the movement. They're fat and old, and they're jaded. Like they're telling you it's okay to get with bar girls and other sorts of sex workers because there's the possibility of love there. Yeah, that's the possibility. Remember what we talked about with these weak possibilities not being tantamount to things that are very likely. This holds here as well. Um, it's like first of all, why would you travel halfway across the world just to date a prostitute? That's absurd. Two, it's disgusting. Three, you make yourself low value in doing so. And like I said, a lot of these guys in the passive bro movement weren't a good face for the movement because they're old, they're fat, and so it makes sense why they would date sex workers because they don't have many options. They're not conventionally attractive to most women, so they're gonna have to pay for it, and they're old again, so they're probably gonna have to pay for it. I mean, you have one guy now. He is relatively young, And again, I'm not going to talk about his looks, but he's not, like Austin Holloman. And you know, he's dating a porn star or former porn star, whatever she is. Very delightful, very pretty, but she's a porn star. Another guy, he's dating a freaking bar girl. Like she looks like she hits, like she looked like she works on Walking Street in Pattaya. Like she's tatted, like she looks like a hooker. Let's be clear. The third one, she's very nice. She's a former massage therapist. I don't know with that one. That one's iffy. Massage therapists are not necessarily sex workers, but the fact that this guy met her in Pattaya is a high likelihood of that because people generally speaking in Pattaya don't go to massage girls for clean massages in Pattaya. It does happen, but I'm pretty sure they're going to give you a. I'm pretty sure most Pattaya massage therapists give a happy ending. Pretty sure they do, if not more than that. And usually you don't even have to ask for it. It's just assumed to be part of the the service. Ask me how I know. But anyway, and no, I did not do stuff on Pattaya. When I went to Pattaya, I was actually on my honeymoon, and unlike most people, I went to train in Muay Thai because I actually went there originally to go on a boat to get to Monkey Island. Missed the boat, so then we walked around Walking Street, and then my newlywed wife decided to treat me and found a Muay Thai gym, one of the best, by the way, Venom Training Camp. Shout out to them. And I trained there for the entire evening. Um, but anyway, um, so a lot of these guys are unrealistic. They're delusional, and is the problem is not just that they're delusional. It's that is that their there's their skewed perspective they preach onto other men who don't know any better because they haven't traveled yet or they haven't traveled to those very places that those guys are talking about. So they have very skewed outlooks on places, usually of, lower economic ranking globally. I'm not going to say third world. I think that term is misused because if anyone who's taken geography and maybe remember their little part in geopolitics know that the term third world is often um, used misleadingly. The terms first world, second world, and third world really did not refer necessarily to poverty. First world countries, first world nations were the ones that were aligned more or less with the West and NATO. Okay. Second world countries were the ones that were aligned with the Soviets and the Warsaw Pact. Okay. And then the third world countries were the ones who weren't strongly aligned with either one. That's why they were called third world. It had nothing to do with them being impoverished. It had to do with them not being aligned either with with the uh, with the U.S. and NATO on the first world end, and they wasn't aligned with the Soviets and the Warsaw alliance on the second world nation end. So then they were third world. Over time, because some of these countries they were aligned with neither tended to be poorer, uh, they were the terms third world and impoverished country became interchangeable, but it's misleading. Plus, especially since a lot of these so-called second world nations now fall into the third world category because a lot of these Soviet states failed. A lot of these states that were aligned with the Warsaw Pact failed. became failed states, and now they will be what's called third world countries or underdeveloped nations. So I think it's a more useful distinction to talk about developed nations and underdeveloped nations than talk about first world and third world. Okay, so the more you know. In any case, so a lot of these guys go to these underdeveloped nations and they seek out low value women, which says more about them than about the women they seek. There are going to be low value women and there are going to be sex workers in every country. But for you to travel halfway across the world and seek them out specifically talks more about you than them, or the fact that you think that the only aim in traveling overseas is to put as many notches on your belt as possible is also very immature. Like some of these guys will be like, "Oh, that's just because you can't get any." Yes, I can. First of all, I didn't have a problem with it here. I damn sure don't have a problem with it overseas. Since I wasn't socially awkward here, and I am or was considered conventionally attractive here in my younger days, I would have not had a problem doing it overseas either. A lot of these guys, a lot of these guys, were socially awkward here in the states, or they had, or they had the ugly man syndrome, like the dude and who's going to the NFL right now with the pretty little Latina girl who's like a trick. I forgot his name. You guys know who I'm talking about, but um, some of these guys will travel. Like I said, they may be old, they may be divorced, so now they have, they're jaded about relationships, so they rather date um, fun time girls or working women, right? To put it nicely, prostitutes. Um, or they're ugly, so they have to pay for it. They don't really have a choice. And a lot of them, they may not even be considered ugly by a lot of those women where they travel. The problem is they still have the ugly man syndrome. Like because they have the ugly man syndrome, they don't see their own worth, so they seek out low value women, and then they go and try to make a living as travel vloggers, and then they teach other men, hey, you guys should come overseas too and find these women because they're easy to get. You can, like, they're easy to bag. These women, they're easy to bag because they're low value. Something that's easy to get is not always the most desirable thing to have. And then they talk about, well, the women, you know are beautiful, they're submissive, all that sort of stuff, and I completely agree. My counter to that is, you you can find feminine and beautiful and submissive women amongst the women, amongst normal women overseas who are not prostitutes and bar girls or porn stars. Like, you it that's some of them realize that, but what they'll say is, well, man, you shouldn't knock it. They was like, and so some, I've talked to a few of them, in the comment section of their videos or whatever, or in some of the groups, and they'll acknowledge what I'm saying. They'll say, well, yeah, that's true. Like, you can find feminine and beautiful submissive women overseas who are not prostitutes, but they was like, but they was like, you shouldn't knock it. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna knock it because I didn't build myself up to the point where I have enough wealth to travel, that I have, you know, a post secondary education, that, I, serve my country just to go overseas and date a prostitute. That's I'm not doing that. And I was like, besides that, that's kind of disgusting. Like, you You want to settle like I get it. Some of them make better partners than modern women in the West. I get that. However, um, the thing is, when I say, yeah, you can find that in more conventional women overseas who aren't prostitutes and bar girls, and they acknowledge it and say, but don't knock the chance of meeting a good bar girl just because of her being a bar girl. I'm like, but you realize how disgusting that is. These bar girls are prostitutes too, and it's like they're called bar girls because they receive a bar fine, and this works a couple of ways. And this is not just in Southeast Asia. This also happens in Latin America and Eastern Europe and probably parts of Africa as well. But with the bar fine, either you're paying a fee to the bar to take this person outside of the bar and spend time with them, or you pay it directly to her, and part of that fee she then gives to the bar so that she can spend time with you. And realize if that's how they make their money, these people just say within a year have probably been with hundreds of men, and over a career, well, not career, if you, I wouldn't call it a career, but over a, a, a several a span of several years, that is a lot of men. They have had, like I said yesterday in my previous live stream, some of these women have had more bodies on them than all of Army Special Forces and Delta Force combined. That's disgusting, because not only is there a higher incidence of sexually transmitted infections because of that, but there is going to be a lot of psychological trauma. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, one of the things that used to notice, pimps used to had to have a sort of working psychology of women, is that they knew that there was a certain time span women could be on the streets and then they would be burnt out. And this happens with these with these with these bar girls too, and these freelancers and so forth, and these massage therapists. Like, there's a point in which there's going to be so much psychological trauma, they're just permanently damaged. On top of that, because there's a neurochemistry of sex, as again I mentioned yesterday, um, they're gonna not be able to pair bond with men after they've done that for a while, because the flooding of certain hormones and neurotransmitters like oxytocin and stuff like that is is permanently altered, so they can't successfully pair bond with one man permanently. Um, and and so it's and like I say, if you can deal with someone who, if it takes a rather tough guy to be able to deal with someone they know's been with thousands of men. Just saying that that is not the average guy who could deal with that. And it's like, if one of the problems with modern Western women is that they're too promiscuous, which is often the case, why would you then go overseas and face the same thing just in a different way? So these guys teaching other men through their travel vlogs, through their online groups, um, that they should go for low hanging fruit like sex workers and others is a bad idea. What's up, Kat? Again, you're coming in halfway into the stream, so you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm actually talking about men today. It's like you get so triggered by what I'm saying. You're not You, just like Miss Needle yesterday, you're not paying attention to what I'm saying. I'm talking about the men. I'm talking about these guys are delusional, going overseas, dating low value women, and then teaching other men that they should do the same thing. I'm saying the men are delusional here, and you just jumping into the stream not knowing what I'm talking about. You're This is what I'm talking about. I'm not getting on the women. I'm not berating them for their life choices. I'm berating these men for teaching other men that they should go after these sorts of women. And it's like, what? These guys are jaded. And I said they're jaded because either they're old, they've been divorced 1 or 2 times, or they have ugly man syndrome, and then they go overseas and they bring their own personal hangups with them, and put and and in doing so, they they limit their own options overseas. And the whole point of going overseas is to broaden your options. If you're going overseas to broaden your options, but you still have your own personal hangups, then you're still going to be limited in your in what you in what you look for and achieve. Like, yes, are there so I will give them the credit that yes, there are some women who may work in the sex industry or come from red light districts who may otherwise still make great girlfriends and wives. I'll give them that. However, why would that be the first thing you go for when you don't have to do so? And again, this is why a lot of these men were not selected to be the face of the passport bro movement when it became so big 3 years ago. Instead, they chose a guy like Austin Holloman, who was young, who was physically fit, who looked socially well adjusted, who, looked and behaved more or less socially well adjusted. Mm, I've had my questions about that, but leaving that aside, I'm not going to dog the brother. I don't agree with a lot of stuff he says and thinks, especially when he went to the Philippines. But leaving that aside, again, I see why the Black Manosphere at the time, when the Black Manosphere was still a coherent thing online, is no longer a coherent thing online, unfortunately. There are still brothers in the Black Manosphere space who are still making good content. A lot of them, shout out to people like Medium Man and Dennis Sperling, even O'Shake Duke Jackson, whom I've had a huge amount of disagreement with, but he still makes a lot of content that people watch. Um, Hassan T. Jackson, Hassan T. Johnson, Dr. Hassan T. Johnson. Sorry, put some respect on his name. He's a doc. He has that PhD. Um, uh, MTR. Media tutorials and reviews. The lead attorney. All these other guys. Zoom to Thailand with Richie Mack. All these people in the Black Manosphere space. Excuse me. A lot of them make good content. A lot of them are informative. A lot of them are entertaining, especially Zoom to Thailand. Uh, but again, when it came to who was going to be the face of the Passport Bro movement, I see why a lot of the folks in that space chose Austin Holloman, because he gave a he was the most presentable. Cats, cut the bullshit out. I'm tired. Look, you're getting triggered because you fall into that space. I'm sorry, you're not being realistic. Women in their 50s are not in their sexual prime, nor have they never been. 50 years ago, a 50-year-old woman would be considered elderly. It's only now, because of modern medicine and better health and nutrition, that a woman in her 50s can be considered still a, a credible dating age. But you're being completely absurd and saying that a 50-year-old woman is in her sexual prime. I'm not women bashing. It's just a fact of life. You don't have limitless options. Only Western women think that they have limitless options. No person has limitless options. If you if you chose for whatever reason to give up or to abstain or to do whatever you wanted to do between your 20s, 30s, and 40s, and now you get into the game in your 40s, 50s, and 60s, it's not going to be the same. That's just a fact. You can argue all you want, but you're wrong. And what you're saying is contradictory and you don't make any sense. You talk a lot of new age bullshit and it doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm always going to be rational. I don't I don't uphold irrational beliefs and claims that can't be supported by evidence. 50-year-old women are not in their prime. Most of them are going through menopause. Why would someone believe they're in their sexual prime? No man, unless he has a fetish for elderly women, is going for 50-year-old women. That's not the norm. That is a fetish. Just like someone who wants midgets, uh, like Vike brought up yesterday, a guy who's into midgets, that's a fetish. A guy who's into elderly women, that's a fetish. Someone who's into morbidly obese women, that's a fetish. That is not the norm. Well, I'm being vulgar and crass because I'm tired of it. And Miss Needle was completely trying to derail my conversation yesterday, being morbid, talking about passing away and stuff when it had nothing to do with my conversation. And if you heard the beginning of my stream, I say I'm going to address that. And going forward, I'm not going to let people derail my conversation because they have a stick up their butt about something they want to talk about. It's it's off putting. I wouldn't come to someone else's stream. I can disagree with someone respectfully, but I'm not going to sit there and derail their conversation. Nor if I know that if I'm in the wrong, I'm not going to keep pushing a bad idea just because I want to believe it. Wanting to believe something and actually having uh, rational grounds for believing it are two different things. We can want to believe a lot of things, but do we have rational grounds to believe them? Maybe not. Maybe so. Again, I use my own self as an example. I may still want to compete as a fighter, but I know that that's not realistic in my age. As much as I want to do it, I know I'm still fit and I know I can fight, but to think I can fight people 20 years, maybe 30 years younger than me is unrealistic. People don't have limitless options. It I, and that was the whole point of yesterday's live stream is people don't have limitless options. To think that you have the same options forever is delusional. That was my point of yesterday. And again, today I'm addressing men. Don't try that you're triggered by me questioning you. I know every fallacious tactic out there. You're not going to try that's fallacious tactic where okay guys, so chat room, this is a fallacious tactic where a person can't challenge you on the merits of your claim, so they try to pretend that you are emotionally distraught in what you're saying to try to put you off your game. But the fact of the matter is, whether you are emotional or non emotional about a certain claim doesn't change the veracity of that very claim. Here on this channel, we deal in logic, reason, evidence, and statistics. We don't deal in emotions, we don't deal in feelings, we don't deal in fallacious tactics, and we don't deal in rhetoric. I didn't say you weren't. I know you're calm. You're saying that I'm not calm. You're saying I'm triggered. My point is whether I'm triggered or not doesn't change the veracity of the claims that I am making, and that is a fallacious tactic. Moving on. So again, getting back to what I was talking about with the fellas who travel, and then so what I was saying before I got into this was that look, I understand that the young brother Austin Holloman made a good face for the Passport Bro movement because he looked presentable. He was a conventionally attractive dude. Okay, uh, he's he came off as socially well adjusted. He was not old. he was not fat. He didn't seem. What was he jaded or not? Maybe a little bit. I don't know. He had some very strong feelings. I don't know if they were genuine or whether he was just playing to an audience at the time when he first came out and he was in Brazil. We're not gonna get into what happened with him in Brazil. He's had his he's talked about it at length, what happened and what didn't happen with him in Brazil. Not gonna get on that. Not gonna dog the brother. Again, I've had my disagreements with what I thought about him. He may or may have not seen some of my comments or videos because he's in his videos he said he's very well aware of a lot of his detractors, and he just doesn't say anything because he wants to be the bigger man. And to that, I say that is a very smart and rational thing to do. Um, that doesn't mean I still agree with him on a lot of stuff that he said, but you know he's carried himself very well. In any case, he made a better face for the passport bro movement because again, some of these other guys in the movement were either weird or just or didn't make a good face for the movement. Like a lot of them were old and fat, and they're talking about, yeah, you need to come overseas where you can have access to women. And the old fat weird looking dude comes off as cringe. Like it's like this is the passport bro movement. This funny looking dude. Like I get why certain folks in the movement weren't considered the face of it, whereas Austin was, right? And I was saying the reason being is that some of these guys are delusional. Like not all of them. So by and large, most of the people in the passport bro movement move in silence. Like they don't really like put out there what they're doing because a lot of them have been traveling like this for the past 20, 30 years, and more or less the like the the movement of guys going overseas, particularly black men looking for relationships and better opportunities, started around World War II when a lot of these guys went overseas when they were in the service, and then they stayed overseas after their service ended, or after their service ended, they went back overseas and stayed as expatriates. A lot of them ended up having children with these women overseas. Um, that was really the start of it, and it's been going on since then. We know this because we hear people's, you know, some of us heard stories from our grandparents and great grandparents about this. Some of us have read articles about this. There was even an old article in the Jet Ebony magazine back in the 50s about this guy who met a Japanese woman and married her. And this is literally in the 50s where it's saying on the cover of this Jet Ebony magazine, uh, do Japanese women make better wives than black women? I'm like, wow, they really said that back in the 50s. But yeah, so now the actual branding of it started with someone who I'm not going to get into who actually branded the term back six I guess 6 years ago or so. I thought he was cool at first, but again, he's one of those dudes that I put in the label I put in the category of folks who are mediocre men here in the States. They're fat, then they wouldn't be considered conventionally attractive by most women. So they're not the right per, they have the right message but the wrong person to spread it, right? This is why Austin made it better. He no longer, by the way, he no longer considers himself part of the Passport Bro movement. But in any case, he still travels, still does his thing, still has his channel where he talks about his exploits overseas. Um, but the guy who kind of trademarked the term, I don't know if he actually started the term, but he trademarked it. He is sort of in that camp of those guys who would be considered mediocre here. You know, he's a middle-aged fat dude who, again, some women probably wouldn't consider conventionally attractive, who otherwise might can be considered above average overseas. And there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes they give the wrong advice to other men who are looking to do what they do. Some of them are like him, where they aren't conventionally attractive. They may be over the hill themselves. They may be be physically unfit like him, but so they're looking to make the same moves. I get that, but is a bit delusional when you're telling men, "Hey, go overseas and date low value women." They don't say low value, but if you're telling someone to that it's okay to date bar girls and freelancers and red light district girls, those are low value women by definition. And don't confuse low class and low value. They are interrelated, but they're not necessarily the same thing. Low, low. You can be low, just you can be low class, but not necessarily low value. A lot of people who made their way up in the world started off at a low at a very low social economic station in life, a low social economic status level, and they've worked their way up through hard work, education, and good old fashioned luck, right? Um, Conversely, there can be people who are of a higher class but still low value. We've seen that. We've seen people who may come from maybe a upper middle class sort of station in life, but they act very ratchet. I mean, again, shout out to the late Kevin Samuels. He addressed that once before when he talked about women with PhD still having ratchet outcomes. You can still be a very educated person making good money and still be ratchet, hence low value. So when I say low value, I don't want people to think I'm being a classist, that I'm talking about people's class. Class and value are related, but they are not synonymous. You can be of low value but come from a higher class station in life, and conversely, you can come from a lower class station in life but become of higher value. I mean, so much so that we even have a term for that, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, which is sounds fictional, which the whole term was meant to be a point of ridicule anyway. How do you pull yourself up from your bootstraps? But the point being that, someone with hard work, determination, and maybe quite a bit of luck, to be sure, quite a bit of luck, can rise from a lower station in life to be very successful. But why would you go all the way overseas? You had to accumulate wealth to be able to travel overseas, and you do so just to date prostitutes. That's not that's not good. And to think that that's okay shows that you're a little out of touch. You're a little delulu. um, and or you go overseas and the woman may not necessarily be a bar girl or a prostitute, but she has multiple children. So you went all the way overseas just to be a stepdaddy. And I had just a former friend, and mind you, the friendship didn't end because of this. It ended because he had some strong political opinions, of which he expected other people to share. And I guess after the election back in November, if people didn't share his political views, he just unfriended them. That just shows that's his issue. Anyone who would stop being someone's friend be, because of that shows that they put their political ideology above friendship. So that's their issue, not yours. If that happened to other people like you, like it did with me. In any case, going overseas to be a stepdaddy is stupid as shit. Like the whole point going overseas is to have a fresh start. I mean, if I can be a stepdaddy here, so yeah, I might get a better submissive woman overseas. But I being one of the factors for me was to avoid the whole stepdaddy thing because again, as I've addressed in a previous live stream a few weeks ago, the whole stepdaddy drama, which is that black men are the only men in any ethnic community who are taught that they must become stepdaddies at a certain age in their life if they haven't already settled down is patently ridiculous. So, if a black guy has built himself up where now he can travel and he wants to avoid the stepdaddy trap here where he lives in America or the UK or Canada, and then goes overseas and just does the exact same thing, what was the point? What was the point? And then some of these guys, like, if the guy decided, hey, I just care for the girl. I don't, I don't, that's not an issue for me. That's fine. But then to go and tell other men, well, blended families are the norm now, and this is what this dumbass said too, by the way. He said, well, blended families are the norm anyways, so why shouldn't I? He said, what's wrong with being a stepdaddy? And I was like, brother, because he was arguing with another friend of mine, and I came in to try to mediate. And I was like, brother, look, there's nothing wrong if you choose to be a stepfather. I said, the problem here, what's up, Blackbeard? I was saying, so the problem here in the US is that they're taught that they have to do so. That they don't have a choice once they're like 30 and above. They have to be stepfathers. That's the issue this guy is having with you. He is like, oh well, I get it. He said, yeah. He said, well, it should, and he acknowledged what I said. He's like, well, you're right. It should be a choice. It shouldn't be something that's just really expected of you. I was like, exactly. I said that was the point he was making. I said, I think you kind of misunderstood him. So I thought I had mediated that, but he was being ridiculous at first with what he was saying because I think he realized that he was, you know, he was going a little too hard in the paint, saying that blended families are the norm, and so you should sort of just deal with it. I'm like, something being whether something is the norm or not doesn't mean that it's first of all being that something is the norm, meaning the statistical mean average, does not mean that it's okay. So, for instance, just because many Americans are overweight or obese, statistically speaking, does not make it does not make it okay. Okay, um, like it kind of it's equivocating between something that is a statistical norm and something that is a um, conventional norm, right? So to that was an equivocation on that part, saying like when someone talks about something being normal in the sense of it being a statistical average, right? And then equivocating that to normality as far as what is conventional in the general population. Those are not the same two things. Sometimes they are, but but not necessarily. And so, like I said, guys can be quite delusional too. Some of them are delusional because they've been brainwashed in Western society with a lot of um, feminist and egalitarian ideas. Life isn't egalitarian, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. And a lot of these feminist ideas are incoherent. Like, so they're not often they lack often they lack um, good reasons to support them. And some of these guys are unrealistic, or like I said, like and I talked about this again yesterday as well. The guys who walk around overseas, they're like in their 60s and 70s, got huge pot bellies, and they're talking about, well, you know, I want a woman who's gonna love me for me and not for my money. And it's like, look here, Unc. Some people call me Unc because of my age, but to me, they're Unc. Like these guys are in the 60s and 70s, maybe 80s. It's like, look here, you already got a foot in the grave, my brother. Not just because of your age, but because you are physically unfit. You haven't seen your dick since you, you haven't seen your dick since Jimmy Carter was in office. Okay, and you're talking about all these women out here are gold diggers. Newsflash: no one finds an elderly man attractive. I mean, unless you are George Clooney, you know, no, like unless you look like George Clooney or you got the Benjamin Buttons thing going for you, that ain't like yes, most women in their 20s and 30s don't think a 70-year-old man is physically attractive. So guess what? The only women who are gonna give you the time of day are gonna make you pay for play. Deal with it. Your options are limited. At your age, you should be already settled down with old Betsy. You and the missus should should be enjoying each other's, golden years. You shouldn't be out here walking you shouldn't be out here on Walking Street in Pattaya or Walking Street in Angeles City or walking around Subic Bay or walking around Medellin or Santo Domingo, um, walking around Hanoi. And some of them don't have no shame in their game. They're just walking out with the gut just out there like bleh, thinking they're gonna find a woman who's gonna love them for them, and they look like Santa Claus on vacation. Like literally look like Santa Claus on vacation. Some of them talking about they want a woman who's gonna love them for them and not and they don't want any these all these little gold diggers. Well, if you don't want any little gold diggers, then those women overseas need to be around your age, your age bracket. Like they don't have to be your age, like specifically. But if you are in your 60s and 70s, you shouldn't be dating anyone below 45 if you're so scared of gold diggers. Otherwise, you're just gonna have to learn that you're gonna have to pay for play. So these guys are delusional, walking around thinking they're gonna find love in their golden years, and like I said, they're physically unfit. They got all these little blemishes on their skin, looking like melanoma. Haven't seen their dick since Jimmy Carter started. Uh, since Jimmy Carter left office, and mad talking about all these women out here are gold diggers. Yeah, because they're your great granddaughter's age. They don't want you. They look at you like their grandfather. So these are the Lulu men. So like I said, people kept talking about, oh, you just hate women and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm talking about delusional people. Period. I don't have any sort of uh, hatred for any particular gender, neither men nor women. My issue is with delusional people because they spread their toxic ideas to others and to try to normalize them. And I have nothing against women. My problem is people who are delusional. If you are a 50-year-old woman thinking you're going to find the right man, no, you're not. You need to find whatever man is willing to deal with you. The right man was back in the 99 in the 99 in the 2000s. That's when you should have settled down in the 99 and the 2000s. Cash Money Records. No, but that's when you should have settled down. At this point in the 50s, you need to be giving it to whoever is willing to deal with you. Oh, Blackbeard, you'll just have to watch the previous live if you don't mind. It was pretty good. It went off rails a bit. I crashed. Like I'm gonna I'm gonna be completely blunt. I crashed out, and I was willing to crash out though because um the nature of the topic was something I was prepared I was gonna crash out, but I had a former moderator come in and just try to derail the topic because she's having some existential crisis, and that was off putting. And then people were challenging me on the YouTube short I made as the prelude to that live stream. I purposely made a YouTube short as a prelude to that live stream because I know it was going to generate interest. Catherine says, "I respectfully disagree. That is your option." Thank you. And I have no problem with anyone disagreeing with me. I'm not always right, and if I can be shown to be wrong, that's great. That means I learned something. However, I won't like if someone's going to challenge me on something, challenge the argument, not the person, right? Not saying you, or you know, and then if you are going to challenge the argument, don't use fallacious tactics. Like um, it, it it comes off either as disingenuous or as intellectually immature when people use fallacious tactics to challenge someone's claims, right? And so I addressed that in the beginning of this live stream. Um, and like I said, so this is to talk about delusional men. Like I said, whether we're talking about a passport bro movement, some of these guys who are in their 50s and 60s who go to Thailand and Philippines and Colombia and Dominican Republic thinking they're gonna find true love with whores. Let me be completely blunt. That like these guys go to these underdeveloped nations, and of all the places they can go in these countries, they specifically go to red light districts and and to the 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 low class communities and deal with whores. And then they're surprised when they don't get the results that they expect. These guys go to Colombia. First of all, I'm just going to be completely blunt. I know, and people can get mad at me. A lot of Latin America is a shithole. I'm just going to say it. A lot of Latin America is a shithole. Colombia is one of those places. Colombia was never a country I thought, I should go there and travel to look for some women. Throughout the 80s, all I've pictured Colombia was a place of drug cartels, which is largely true. And there's even there was uh, a counter revolutionary group called FARC that was in open warfare against the government. They 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 had a treaty going for several years, but then last year that treaty broke down. So that's not a safe place to go. I don't care whether you're going to Medellin, to Bogota, to Cartagena, um, or any of those other places. They are dangerous. Like my own cousin, like one of my cousins lives down there in Colombia. Not gonna say where. um, and one of my other cousins went to go visit him. He's been down there several times with him. He told me the first time he went down there, he saw someone get unalived. Now, mind you, I've lived in Baltimore for a number of years and in Philly, and I've seen some heinous stuff, but I've never seen anyone actually get unalived in front of me. I've seen stuff close to that, but I would not have been traveling thousands and thousands of miles just to see the same stuff I could see back in Baltimore. On top of that, a lot of these women that they're meeting, especially on things like Tinder, these are low value women, and a lot of these women are allied with these guys who set these these sex tourists up. Some of you may have seen this on the news with the scopolamine and stuff like that. It got so bad in Colombia that last year the U.S. government had to put out a warning to American tourists to stop going there, and if they were going there, to not try to meet women there, um, through like these dating groups and dating apps like Tinder, because a lot of them were getting drugged and robbed and even executed. Catherine says women do not settle for whatever they can get. Yes, they do. At a certain age, you do. This again, you're being delusional, and this is the whole point of my live stream yesterday. You're being delusional because you think you have limitless options. No one has limitless options. Life is a matter of trade-offs. You cannot have everything, but only women in the West believe they can have everything. They think that their options are forever, and it's not. When you are a middle-aged, broken down woman, you are not as attractive as a 21-year-old woman. You're not. And you don't have the same options as her. Can you still find someone to be in a relationship with in your 50s? Yes, but it's going to be harder, and you're not going to have the same, you're not going to be able to attract the same men that you could 30 years ago. It's not going to happen. It's unrealistic. Can it happen? Yes. But again, as I addressed in the beginning of this live stream, modal terms like can happen, might happen, may happen, those are weasel words. Just because something can happen or may happen or might happen doesn't mean it's very likely. Possibilities don't equal probabilities. And again, that's why I was trying to give homage to Kevin Samuels, because a lot of this stuff he's talked about years ago, as did many other people in the manosphere. Because you live overseas, and so does Miss Needle, you guys aren't aware that there's a thriving part of YouTube and other social media platforms for the manosphere. I speak for people in the manosphere. Men don't have Men don't have the luxury of being unrealistic like that. We know that our options are limited. Yeah, they can choose to stay single. Again, I don't begrudge anyone for staying single or choosing a career over a relationship or anything like that. What I was saying, and you guys willfully miss what I say, and that's what's irritating, is you guys will miss things that I say willfully so, because I've already made these comments myself that you're bringing up. Again, I'm not going to begrudge anyone for choosing to stay single. I'm not going to choose anyone for wanting to have a career over a relationship. My issue is that then when you then decide, well, now I want to settle down into a relationship, you still think you have the same options that you did when you were much younger, and you don't. You're not the same nubile person. Just like I'm not the same physically fit person when I that I was at 19 that I am now in my late 40s. I'm not 19 anymore. I can't just go into the ring and expect that I can have a healthy career as a professional fighter. It's just not it's unrealistic for me. Um, you know, I can't re-enlist and expect that I can still get through selection and assessment to get into a soft unit. I can't. It's unrealistic. Op- Options are not limitless. That's my point. That is my whole point about being delusional, whether with men or women, is thinking that you have the same options regardless of your circumstances. Options options are not limitless for anyone. For everyone, there are a series of trade-offs. When you choose one path, it necessarily closes others to you. That's what I'm saying. I think everyone should get that. No one said you need a man to define you. Again, you keep trying to change the goalposts. You keep trying to move the goalposts. It's not, Cat. You use nothing but fallacious tactics. You're moving the goalposts. No one said that a man needs to define you. That is not what the point was in my live stream yesterday. You keep moving the goalposts using fallacious tactics, using irrelevant topics. Like, it's no. I don't think most women are aware that life is different as you get older. They still are quite delusional, as you are, because you've you yourself have kind of demonstrated that earlier in the comments. People don't have the same options throughout life. No one does. There are trade-offs in life for everyone, and it's only Western women who think that they are the exception to trade-offs. No, I didn't say that women have to settle for what they. Again, all right, I'm gonna address this, and then I'm I'm not addressing this again because you are being willfully ignorant. You are being willfully ignorant. I said women after they hit the wall in their 40s, 50s, and 60s no longer have to settle for what they can get because they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. They are elderly women. They are elderly women. A woman, a woman in her 50s 100 years ago would be an elderly woman. It's only now because of modern medicine and of better health and nutrition that a person in their 50s can still have a viable life. 100 years ago, no, a 50-year-old woman would be considered elderly, and you're being delusional in that regard. So yes, I'm gonna call a spade a spade. It's being delusional. You're being delusional, and you keep trying to change. You keep trying to change from one thing to the next. I'm not gonna play that game. What I said is where I stand. I'm not gonna let you move the goalpost to some other irrelevant thing to make a to try to change the topic for what I actually said. I never said that all women have to settle for what they can get. I never said that, and I never said that women are defined by men. Those are complete straw man arguments, which I've never made. And yes, 50-year-old men and 50-year-old women are in a different category. They are in a different category because, again, you need to read up on red pill and the manosphere because obviously you don't know anything about this. You are moving the goalposts because it had nothing to do with what I was talking about. And anyway, yes, they are in a different place, a 50-year-old man and a 50-year-old woman, because a man's a man's capital in the sexual marketplace is not his beauty; it is his resources. A woman's collateral, a woman's capital in the sexual marketplace is her youth and beauty. That's why it dwindles. A man hits his prime around his 40s or 50s because that's when he comes into his most he's that's when most of them become financially independent. And if they don't, then now their choices are forever dwindled. If a guy does not reach that sort of financial security in his 40s and 50s, then they themselves have very limited options. They're going to have to settle for Torquisha. A woman, on the other hand, she was in her prime in her 20s. That was when she should have found someone. And I'm not going to keep repeating this. You're being willfully ignorant. There's literally thousands and thousands of hours of content on this very subject. This is why I gave homage to Kevin Samuels yesterday. I'm not going to keep I'm not going to keep reinventing the wheel when this is literally like a whole segment on YouTube in the manosphere that talks about this thing. There are hundreds of content creators. There are thousands of hours addressing this. I'm not going to keep addressing it. Old fat women do not have the same choices as a fit 20-year-old woman. Plain and simple. Anyone who in any most rational people will understand that. A 50-year-old woman is a grandma. At this point, she should be making chocolate chip cookies for her kids or her grandkids or her nieces and nephews. The Golden Girls. The Golden Girls, long time ago in the 80s, in the early 90s, they were only in their 50s. People don't remember this. If people go back to the old TV series, The Golden Girls, most of them were in their 50s. But we looked at them like they were old women back then. Blanche and all of them, they were in their 50s. Guys, go back to the Golden Girls. They weren't like in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. These women were in their 50s. These were the Golden Girls. They were called the Golden Girls. They were only in their 50s. Counterclaims don't mean anything if they're not tethered to it, to, again, logic, reason, evidence, and statistics. Again, you look back at the Golden Girls, they were in their 50s. No, they were not older than that. I remember the show. I watched it. I'm American. I watched the show when I was a kid. To me, they were old as dirt. But when you go back to it now, because it's on Hulu, the show is on Hulu, they are in their 50s on the show. They are literally in their 50s. The oldest one is the mother. Ironically, the actress who played the mother was actually younger than most of the actors in real life. But the one who played the mother, she was the oldest one in the group. But the three other women, they were in their 50s. Actually, I think they started off in their late 40s, but by the end of the show, they were like in their late 50s. The oldest one was the mother. And again, the irony is that the mother, the actress who played the mother, was actually younger than most of the actresses in real life, like Betty White and all of them. Betty White died at 99 or 98, whatever, 2 years ago. Any case, moving on. I'm sticking with we're talking about delusional men. You, I'm not going to keep I'm not going to keep harping about yesterday's live stream just because you weren't there to participate. I made those points in that live stream yesterday and then the prelude to it in the YouTube short. The point here is delusional people. And here I'm talking about the men. I'm talking about men who think they have the same options as a young man, or what we call now a YN. Some of y'all know what I'm talking about. The YNs, right? Like some of these old dudes think they can move like a YN. You're not a YN, brother. You're a unk. Unks can't do what YNs do. Unks can't do what YNs do. So we're talking about the guys here. I'm not going to let someone keep derailing my conversation about yesterday's live stream. That's why I addressed it in the beginning of this live stream. I did it in the beginning of the live stream. I said part one of this live stream will be addressing yesterday, and part two will be going forward talking about men. We're in the part two talking about men. That's what we're doing now. Not talking about part one that was addressing the first half an hour of this live stream. That's why I'm being irritated, because I'm not going to keep addressing something that I've already addressed. I want to keep. I'm not. I don't do other people's live streams where they just talk about random shit. I stick with a topic unless it's asking me anything day. Then people can ask me random stuff. When I have a selective topic, I'm sticking to that topic. This is how monetized people work. So anyway, guys, unks can't move like YNs, right? You talking to the brothers here. You cannot be 55 years old wearing them skinny jeans with the gut all out, the gold toothless. I don't have a gold tooth, but they have the gold fronts, gray hair with the locks. Like, come on, stop it, stop it, Stop it. You got gray hair with locks, with the gold teeth, wearing the skinny jeans with the gut, with 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 the butter Tims. Come on, bro. Stop it. Stop it. Again, shout out to the late great Godfather Kevin Samuels, who told like older men to dress like men, stop dressing like teenagers. Like you cannot move like the YNs. You cannot do like the YNs do. You cannot. And I mean, you can do like they do, but you're gonna look patently ridiculous. No, like a lot of people won't say anything, but they're gonna think it. They're gonna be like, "Look, what is this? What is Unc doing? Like 55 dressed like he like 18." And Kevin Samuels addressed this, and he got a lot of pushback from brothers. Like I said, he got a lot of pushback about the stuff he said about women, but he talked a lot about stuff that the men were doing that was that was off code too. When the guys were off code, he addressed it. Okay, he told these guys, look, you know, you're too old to be walking around in Jordans. Like, stop it. And it's like unless you are playing, like unless you are hooping, like unless you actually hoop, you should not be walking around in Jordans. Like, no. Like get you a pair of shoes, right? And you shouldn't be walking around in gray sweatpants either. Like, come on. Like occasionally, yeah, you can wear some gray sweatpants, but when you're going to places like to the restaurants and airports, you shouldn't be dressed like that. I've made those mistakes myself. I'm not going to hold you. Have made those mistakes myself. I've literally gone to the airport in some gray sweatpants. Mind you, my excuse for that, not that it's a good excuse, but my excuse for that was, hey, this is a long distance overseas trip. I want to be comfortable. However, I realized the faux pas in that because this is again before I watched Kevin Samuels, but I, I realized, look, I get treated more respectfully if I dress more age appropriate. But again, a lot of these older guys think they can dress like these YNs, and you cannot do that. You cannot dress like the Y. If you're in your 40s, your 50s, and 60s, you should not be dressing like your son, your grandson, or your nephew. That no, it's it looks ridiculous. You look ridiculous, and you're not going to be treated in the manner in which you should be at your age. And a lot of guys realize this. Like they'll go in, they'll go out dressed in their little YN looking outfit with the Jordans, with the Tims. I have Tims myself, but usually when I do wear Tims, I will wear them with like khakis or some nice looking pants. They hang over them so they don't look like hiking boots, right? Um, but and then when I do wear sneakers, I don't wear Jordans or something that will call attention to myself. I wear like casual sneakers, like casual walking shoes. And it's not to be cheap because yes, they are cheaper, but I'm not wearing them because they're cheaper. I'm wearing them because they don't they're not they don't look like something someone half my age will be wearing. Okay. Um, but a lot of these guys will realize, so they'll go out and dress like a younger guy, a YN, and then the next day they'll go out wearing a suit or maybe like like a dinner jacket with a turtleneck and some nice pants and some shoes. And they'll notice they'll get treated a lot better because they look age appropriate and they look more dignified. There's a certain dignity that comes with age. And so that's another delusional thing is that these older men think it's appropriate for them to still dress like a teenager. That's inappropriate, and you look ridiculous, even though no one may actually tell you so. Now the young guys, they will call you out on it. They don't care. They don't have any cut cards. They'll tell you like, yo, why you dressed like a YN? What? How old are you? Like you got gray hair, man. What you like 100? They will roast you, and you deserve it. If I don't always dress age appropriate, but I will dress for comfort. Black business, if you, I know you still pop out the house in Jordans with your chains on sometimes. Me? First of all, I don't even wear chains. For me, the the whole chain with the medallion for me, I stopped doing that in my 20s, brother. Like I literally like I haven't uh rocked the chain since I was like 26, 27. No, no, why? No, he was good, Moonlit. Like he was fine. He was addressing what I was just talking about. Sorry about that, Blackbeard. But I don't know how much you caught of what I said. Uh, if you're still here, brother. But I was saying, yeah, I haven't walked out with the chain and Jordans since my 20s. Matter of fact, I've only had one pair of Jordans my whole life, and that was when uh, I was 19. I bought my first pair of Jordans when I was, I think, 19. Blackbeard says this is the second time Moonlit you starting to hurt my feelings. Blackbeard is chill, Moonlit. He has never been out of Blackbeard has never been out of pocket. He's a good guy. But did you catch what I said, Blackbeard? Like, yeah, I haven't I haven't rocked the chain and the medallion since like I was like 26. That was probably like the last time. The only thing you see me wearing now are like my dog tags, and I don't even flash those. Those stay underneath, underneath my clothing. Only jewelry now I rock is my is my wedding ring, my wedding ring, and like my little Casio watch. That's about it. A cheap little watch and a wedding ring. But yeah, and like I said, as far as Jordans, I've only had Jordans once when I was 19 because I actually had a little bit of money to waste, which is exactly what I did. I wasted it because I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna get. I finally got some Jordans. The bitch is gonna the B's gonna be on my DICK. I didn't get one bit. Not one person gave me any recognition when I had any Jordans, mind you. And it was the first time I've ever had like expensive. That was like the first time I ever wore expensive sneakers. The first time, not the last time, but it was like the first time I wore expensive sneakers. I didn't get one bit of recognition. No one said anything about my Jordans that I can remember. I might have had. I think maybe my my Spanish friend might have mentioned it once, and that's about it. Other than that, none of the girls was looking at me like, he's fresh. He looking real fresh right now. No recognition. So I was like, this is whack. I spent all this money on these Jordans when I could have did whatever with the money instead. Like, and I mean, bro. So I was living in the Washington. I, I was living in the Washington suburbs at the time, the Washington D.C. suburbs. I went all the way from Silver Spring out to Pentagon City Mall. No. It wasn't Pentagon City Mall. It was the county mall in in Fairfax Mall. I went, yeah. So this is in Fairfax County, Virginia, like right outside of DC. I went all the way to, I don't know why I was all the way out there. I think that might have been when I was looking into a modeling agency deal at the time. Yeah, your boy almost tried to become a model. But so I was all the way out Fairfax, Virginia, and went to the mall and bought some Jordans. And they were I loved them. And I'm thinking, yo, I'm fresh. Like my boy is gonna be like big me up because I got the fresh Jordans on. The girl's gonna be on my D. None of that happened. No one cared. Like no one cared. I and by the way, I didn't know it was so late. I'm gonna get off in a few minutes. Again, I apologize to Kat. Like because she came. The problem with coming in to a live stream halfway in is that you miss a lot of the stuff that I talked about in the beginning, which is why there was a lot of misunderstanding. He said, "Bruh, no modeling, no offense." No, I wanted to model because I wanted to get rich. I wanted to look famous. I was trying to be like Tyson Beckford back in the day. This is like the late '90s. Tyson, you had people like Tyson Beckford and what what's the guy from Soul Food? Whatever that guy's name. But like I was trying to be like Tyson Beckford back in the day. I wanted to be on the I wanted to be on Polo. Why can't I be on Polo or on Tommy Hill figure? Tommy Hill nigga. Maybe sorry. or or Nautica. Oh shoot, I wanted to be like that. Shit. But nah. So anyway, bringing this to a close, and I'm going on a tangent. But yeah, so after buying the Jordans at 19, I never bought them again because I was like, I spent all this money and it didn't do anything profound in my life. No one was looking at me differently because I was already 19 and it was basically expected of a teenage black boy to wear wear expensive sneakers for no reason. So that was the first and only time I bought Jordans was at 19. Now I bought expensive um not Jordan sneakers before that. Well, not expensive, but I had Air Force Ones in the 2000s. Got to get two per. Now I'm playing. I didn't buy two pairs. But yeah, I had Air Force Ones, and I even bought the LeBron sneakers, which at the time I didn't even buy them because I knew they were LeBron. I just thought they looked nice, and it's funny. It wasn't until I went to the Philippines that I even knew that I was wearing LeBron sneakers because one of the like for people don't know, a lot of Asians are definitely on their sneaker game. The Asian Asian men, the young Asian dudes, their sneaker game is wicked. Like, and in the Philippines, they definitely they got a huge, they got a lot of sneaker heads. Matter of fact, there is a Jordan, there is a there's a Jordan store in Metro Manila. So some of y'all don't know that. Like Michael Jordan actually came out there when the store opened for its grand opening. It's in it's um it's in Quezon City. I don't remember what part of Quezon City, but there's a Jordan store in Metro Manila. So when people be talking about the Philippines and Thailand and third world countries, they have no idea how lavish people are living in places like Bangkok and Metro Manila and in Ho Chi Minh City and Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, and many other places. But it, I was walking through the mall, and this Filipino guy was like, "Hey man," he's like, "Those are some nice LeBrons," and I was like, "Oh, thank you." And I was like, now I was like, "Damn, I didn't even know these were LeBrons." He informed me, but they weren't expensive as Jordans, by the way, because if they had cost in the same like Jordans nowadays, depending on the type you get, I think can be like in the 200. I think they're like in the 200 range. My LeBrons were not that expensive. But I've only had Jordans once, and like I said, the LeBrons, I'll rock those for like 3 years before I dogged them out from running in them. But I bought those like in 2017, had them until like 2019, maybe 2020 when I started running in them and dogged them out. But before I ran in them, I kept, meticulous care of them, like I did with most of my shoes. But yeah, I have not been a gold chain Jordan wearing type dude. Not even in my younger years, like I said, except for like a brief period in time when I bought my first pair of Jordans, and that was my last time. And when I was in college, I was on my pretty boy Roy, my pretty, So I used to have the chain with the button down with the buttons open with the so you could see the collar. And it took the dog tags off, so I just had the medallion on the and my sneaker game was pretty good, but I didn't have like expensive sneakers. They were just like I just had a lot of variety of them. But I wouldn't do that today. I would find it just patently absurd at my age to be dressing like that, like someone at that age. Like back then, I was 22, 24. I wouldn't dress like that still. After you're 20, like after you're 30, you need to get that up. 25 really, but 30 to 35, no. It starts to look a little goofy. And like I said, no one will tell you other than those young guys. The young guys will they they will call you out on it, and they're the only ones who will. What's the Batman pick? Oh, that was. Oh, I'm sorry, I just saw that. That was signed by Neil Adams. Uh, Unfortunately, I got that signed by Neil Adams 3 years before, 4 years before he died. At the Comic Con. Like I said, I feel you never got nothing either with Jordans on. Mind you, not getting Jordans was a big thing. Was a big blow to my ego at the time because I was a huge Jordan fan. Like I literally grew up in Chicago when the Chicago Bulls became the preeminent team of the NBA back in the 80s and 90s. Because when I was living in Illinois at the time, that's when Jordan was drafted to the Bulls. And mind you, before he was drafted to the Bulls, he had already won a gold medal in the Olympics before he went professional with the Bulls. A lot of times now, a lot of these guys get gold medals in the Olympics after they've joined the NBA. Like Mike Tyson, Michael Jordan, they earned their gold medals in the Olympics before they went pro, not after. So it was like living in Illinois at that time in the 80s and early 90s. It was Jordan everything. Like we all wanted the Jordan poster, the life size Jordan poster. There was the Jordan cologne. There was Michael Jordan cologne. Everybody wanted the basketball with the signed Michael Jordan signature on it. We kept claiming, oh, Michael Jordan lives in our neighborhood. Like, oh, Michael Jordan lives in Crete, Illinois. He has a house. Well, he said, no, he has a house in Crete, Illinois somewhere. None of us can ever prove it, but we kept saying, oh yeah, he has a house in our neighborhood. No, he didn't. um, we all ate Wheaties. Let's be honest, Wheaties was a nasty ass cereal. But we all ate it because Jordan was the spokesperson for it. We went to McDonald's because he was the spokesperson for McDonald's. We wanted Jordans or the flights. Before it was Air Force One, they were what we call flights. Um, Before they were called Air Force Ones, they were called flights. And like you either had to have Jordans or the cheaper ones, which were the flights. And I never had either. And it was disappointing because as a kid, I couldn't afford those things. I used oftentimes when we went to get clothing, my mom took me to Payless, and I had Pro Wings. Y'all remember Pro Wings, the Pro Wing sneakers? So I never grew up having expensive sneakers. That's why it was so important to me when I was 19 to finally have Jordans. I thought after a life of wearing stuff like Pro Wings and LA Gear and Reebok Classics that once I have Jordans, you know, I would be treated differently, and there was no change. So after I saw that wasn't the case, I never bought Jordans again. And I only bought LeBrons back in 2017 because I literally didn't know they were LeBrons until a Filipino person, excuse me, in Manila told me I had on LeBrons and gave me props. But you know, so you pulling my chain. He said, I don't know what's going on. I want the story behind the Batman pick. Listen to Lupe Fiasco too, I bet. um I never had his album, if that's what you mean. I mean all I'll say this, like all the conscious rappers of like the late 90s, early 2000s, I like Lupe Fiasco, um Black what would it, was it Black Prez? What was they called? Is that what they would call Black Prez? Um, you know, Most Def obviously, and um, Pharaoh Monk, and all these. Yeah, I used to listen to a lot of those conscious rappers back then. Remember Kanye when he first came out was a conscious rapper. Well, he marketed himself as a conscious rapper. He actually we know now he wasn't actually a conscious rapper, but he marketed himself as a conscious rapper. So I was into him back then. But yeah, I was always into the conscious rapper stuff. But anyway, Melissa for us awesome. He said that's sick with the autograph as well. Yeah, I met him. Neil Adams is a good guy, and for a lot of people don't know about Neil Adams, he was the one who helped the creators of Superman get many of their rights back to the character after DC fucked them out of their rights to the character. This is why when the Superman movie came out, that was the first time in like like 30 years that their names were attached to Superman. Like, was it Jerry Siegelman and Joel Shuster? And they're still fighting with DC Comics to this day for their rights to, to Superman, even with the current movie and the current comic books. Neil Adams worked behind the scenes to help them get some of their rights back, so that they got credit as the creators in the original Superman movie and going forward with all the comics. But but their estates are still fighting with the comic book company today over full rights to to their creation. And this was helped along by Bob Kane, who helped fuck them over. He ratted them out because they were originally going to take their Superman to another company, and Bob Kane warned DC Comics at the time, and in doing so, they gave him full credit to Batman, even though Bill Finger was one of the people who created most of what we know about Batman. He created his mythos, he created his outfit. Originally, Bob Kane's idea was for Batman to have on a colorful outfit, have blonde hair, and have wings. Um, Bill Finger changed his appearance and gave him his origins and created Robin and Joker and I believe Catwoman. And he wrote a lot of the stories as well. Um, Bob Kane wrote some of the stories, but a lot more was done by Bill Finger. And he died penniless because Bob Kane got full rights to Batman because he ratted out the creators of Superman, Joel Shuster and Jerry Siegel. because they were dissatisfied with DC at the time. They were going to take their character to a different comic. Anyway, enough back. That's enough backstory on that. Melissa can confirm Wheaties taste like cardboard. Yeah, he said, "Wow, does LA Gear exist anymore?" Yeah, LA Gear is still around. They're still around. I've seen them. Shoot, Adia doors are still around. I didn't even know that. I saw Adia doors in the Philippines, and I was showing my wife. I was like, "Baby, do you know these were out back in like the early '80s? Like LL Cool J was talking about Adia doors." I said I didn't even know they were still being made, and they're here in the Philippines. Dick Grayson, the original Robin, he created Robin. There was only one Robin for like 50 years. Like the Jason Todd didn't come out to the '80s. Who was the second Robin? Um, and then also Carrie Kelly, if people want to consider her, even though she wasn't canon, she was in the Dark Knight Returns in 1985. But Jason Todd was the second Robin, and then it was Carrie Kelly, who was a Robin in a post-apocalyptic future in Dark Knight Returns. Then it was Tim Drake. But again, Tim Drake, I mean, sorry, not Tim Drake. Dick Grayson was Robin for like 40 years before he became Nightwing. Um, he came out in 1940, 41. I have the comic in this case. A facsimile reprint, not an original. But he came out around 1940 to soften Batman's image and um, make him uh, more digestible for kids through the eyes of Robin. No, Nightwing didn't become a villain. He became the leader of the Teen Titans. Are you, dude, are you okay? When did you? Nightwing was never a villain. Nightwing was when Batman fired Dick Grayson as Robin. He became Nightwing and led the Teen Titans. Um, but Dick Grayson has never been a bad guy unless it was in an alternative storyline. Anywho, so getting back to my story, so I'm like I have dressed the part of a YN, but the only time I dressed the part of a YN was when I was actually a YN. For the past 10 years, I dressed like a call center employee because that's what I was. Call center employees have a certain look, the khakis, the button down, or the sweater. That's how I dressed the last 10 years. I look like what people say is a square. I've never had the YN look. Now, when I wasn't at work, I would dress a little more trendy on the weekends. But even on the weekends, I didn't dress like a YN. I just had on I would just wear like a graphic T-shirt and some jeans and maybe some Tims or some low cut walking shoes. But I've never. But in my from the age of like 35 till now, I have not tried to look like a YN. I guess other than my leather jacket. I guess, but I don't really say the leather jacket is a YN thing. I just like leather jackets. I'm not gonna stop liking leather jackets. I like leather jackets ever since I was 13, and I bought one when I was 16 with my first paycheck. Working at Burger King, my first paycheck, I went, to the Leatherman store and bought me a leather jacket. Now that I can say did get me treated differently by girls. They was on my dick a little bit, just 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 a little bit. Like we sitting in class, and the teacher's like, "Why all of y'all wearing your coats trying to look cool? It's hot in here." And we didn't care. But the thing was, we weren't wearing our jackets to look cool. to try to be cool in class. We were wearing our jackets because we didn't like walking all the way across the side of all the way from one end of the high school to our lockers all the way back to the other end of the high school to get to our class. That's why we kept our coats with us all the way through the school day. We would just take them off when we got hot and hang them on our chairs. But I mean, you had like 5 minutes between to get to the next class each period, and it's like if you're, you know, that's fine if you in a very small high school, but for the average high school size, it was it was a length it was a little lengthy from one end of the high school to the next, and you didn't feel like putting your stuff up in the locker, then going to class, and let's say you might go outside for lunch or whatever, or you might be in a class where it's a class where you usually had one class every day that was chilly, especially if it was like a lab class, like chemistry or something like that. And the teachers thought we was trying to look cool. It wasn't that. We were just too lazy to try to go to our locker rooms and back. So most of us we didn't even put our textbooks in our lockers. We kept every single textbook in our book bags. So we were walking around with these huge, like we were prepared for the army because we were already wearing like book bags that probably weighed like 30 pounds going from class and back. So we looked like we were rucking to every class. We had on our jackets and we had on like a huge book bag with like 5 textbooks in it. That shows how adorable those JanSport book bags are. Which, surprise, surprise, that's why my bug out bag is a JanSport bag because they're adorable. If a book bag can last 1 year, maybe 2 years, carrying 30 carrying like 30 pounds of books back and forth every single day, I'm pretty sure they're durable enough to be a bug out bag. So those JanSport bags were durable. But yeah, so from the age, like I said, from the age of no, I'm gonna say not even. Uh, yeah. So I say at least from 35 to now, and I'm in my late 40s now. I've never dressed like a YN, not tried to. Like I said, the closest you could say I look like a YN is either wearing my Tims, and that's merely because my Tims are comfortable, especially in the winter. I wear them in the winter and throughout the fall and winter because they're comfortable, and I keep them covered up so they don't. And actually, the current hiking boots I have aren't even Tims; they're Fila boots. Because I remember it was funny. This Vietnamese guy tried to roast me. I went to a pho noodle shop, and the dude was obviously high, which is why my friend and I were laughing because we could tell the dude was high. And he was like, "Yo, what's up?" He said, "Who you got some Tims on?" He said, "Man, what's hold up?" He said, "Those aren't Tims." He said, "What are those?" I was like, "They're Fila boots." He's like, "Fila, man, you wearing them fake Tims?" And my homeboy was laughing. I didn't care. Dude was high, and my friend was younger than me, so he was like, "Yo, he got you on your fake Tims." I was like, "They're not fake Tims, they're Fila." I was like, anyone from the New York tri-state area knows about Fila. Like people rock Fila. I was like, back in Baltimore, I said people used to rock Fila here as well. I was like, they fell out of style down here, but people still rock Fila up north. People, so other than like wearing my Tims, but that's just because I like wearing hiking boots because they're comfortable and I can wear them throughout the fall and the winter and spring. And the fact that I wear a leather jacket frequently. Other than that, I've never tried to like resemble a YN. I don't wear the chains. Like I said, I haven't wore a chain since I was like 26. Um, I no longer have pierced ears. I used to have pierced, like I said, I was on my Pretty Boy Roy thing back in my college years. I used to have I used to have diamond stud earrings in both ears. Had the I had the platinum chain with the dragon medallion. I had a blinged out watch, not like this. I had a blinged out watch. Um, and I had like a variety of sneakers, not expensive, but I had a variety of sneakers. Had the baggy pants. I walk and again I would walk around in like either a leather jacket or a pea coat or or my like my American Eagle bubble jacket or whatever. Like so I looked the YN part when I was an actual YN in my 20s, but I don't do that anymore. And I think it's it looks it doesn't look age appropriate for someone in their 40s or 50s to be still dressing that way. So that gets back. So going back full circle to that is so some men do things that are delusional as well. And when I say delusional, guys, delusion I'm defining delusional as out of touch with reality or irrational. Said no, check out Jaw Paws Adidas, literally super terrain. Thank me later. Adidas Jaw Paws are amazing. Haven't heard them. There's some shoes I've already know that I want to get. Um, um, just saving money. Like I'm married, so I can't spend money frivolously as I want to anymore. Only time you guys see me buying stuff, you'll see me buy a few collectibles here and there. But mind you, I get my all the uh, collectibles and comic books I get are cheap. Like I get I get my collectibles through third party vendors. Even if they're which is cuts down on price when trying to buy vintage toys. Because if I bought them mint in box, like it can cost a pretty penny, and I don't have money to spend like that. With my comic books, I buy I buy facsimile reprints. I don't buy them. I don't buy the originals because that's too much. Like even if I do like the auction, it's still because sometimes Third Eye comic books. Shout out to them. They have auctions starting at one starting just at $1, but there's a cutoff point for me. Like I'm not willing to spend more than I would be embarrassed to say I spent on a single issue comic book. So often what I'll do, I'll just buy the trade paperbacks instead of buying a single issue comic so I can get the whole story in one, and it costs less buying the whole trade paperback as opposed to single issues. And also a side effect is that comic book artists and writers get paid more on sales of trade paperbacks than they do on single issue comics, which is a shame that they don't get paid properly. But that's a whole story for another discussion. Is the comic book industry. But when I don't buy frivolously, um, so when you guys see me so happy showing you that I bought like a Deadpool Toy Biz action figure from 1992 or something else from the past, I'm happy because I only got it because I found it at a really great price, usually through eBay, sometimes Amazon, but usually through eBay or sometimes at a Comic Con. But I don't spend frivolously on clothes and shoes. So when I was working at the call center, a lot of these guys were like, "Yo, bro, how are you traveling like that?" Because some of them made more money than I did, and I was like, "Bruh, I don't have a mortgage, I don't have a car note, I don't have children. That's how." And he was like, "Oh, okay." Because yeah, I mean, if if over 50% of your income is going to you having a car, like that's it's not worth it. I get it, you need to have a car, but you live in a big city. Like if you're living in the Baltimore area, like there's plenty of public transportation. I know public transportation sucks in Baltimore, but it's better than spending like over 50% of your income on your car because you're spending on your car note your car insurance, gas, and maintenance. And rest assured, a lot of them, if that car breaks down for some reason, then that's all their money to repair it or replace it. So I might look square because I'm using public transportation, but hey, I'm not spending half of my income on a car just to impress some hood boogers. But it was other things they did with their money that I didn't even say because I didn't want to offend them, which is also why they didn't have money to travel. Um, a lot of these guys, again, almost none of them were married, and most of them had kids. And again, a lot of your income is going to go to your children, and then you might be paying child support as well. Or a lot of these guys, like as soon as they as soon as they got their check on Fridays, they went out, they spent it and bought. They would just buy a they would buy a lot of clothing. I never dressed flashy at work, so people didn't know that I could dress as well until they saw me one casual Friday. And one of the bosses was like, "Yo, I'm on. All right, I see you." I was like, man, I was like, I can dress a little bit sometimes. I was like, I just don't do it at work. He's like, okay, I got you. But like, I wasn't flashy at work, so people didn't know. Yeah, I could dress too, but that wasn't something I did. Like they went like the money they spent on like clothing could have been a flight somewhere, right? And then the worst the worst thing they did with the money wasn't just buying expensive clothing and shoes. The worst thing they did with their money is that they would get the money and then they would trick off with it, or they would buy some weed or some blow. But yeah, some of these guys would trick off with their money once they got their paycheck. And you're wondering, how can I travel? Because I don't have any of your bad habits. Again, I'm not paying a mortgage. Most of them didn't have a house either, but they were paying like expensive rent. But most of us know that home ownership is cheaper than renting, right? Anyway, I didn't have a mortgage. Still living with family. Not ashamed to say. Didn't have a car note. And didn't have a car, so I also didn't wasn't paying because I almost did buy a car right before I started traveling. I'm glad I didn't because if I had bought that car right before I started traveling, I would have never met Mrs. Contrarian because all my money would have went to that car. And here's a funny tidbit. I hope she don't mind me telling you guys this. So she was dating someone at the time. Well, it wasn't. They weren't even. It was like not even dating because he was here in America and he never committed to going over there to see her because he was too caught up in his Mustang. And when she told me this, when we first started talking to each other, I clowned the shit out of him. So I was like, so this guy works at a supermarket and he's so caught up in his little pussy mobile Mustang that he won't come see you. I was like, he's a loser. I was like, mind you, this was me macking at the time. Me and Mrs. Contrarian wasn't even together. I was macking. I was like, that guy ain't coming to see you. I said, he's more worried about his pussy mobile than coming to see you. She realized I was right. Um, and that was that. And like I almost fell into the same trap. Like my father at the time was gonna help me, you know, put down on a nice car. And again, my father and I were in sync. Like he was saying, you don't need a car note. He said just get a good used car so you don't have to pay a car note every month. He and I were in agreement with that. I thought a car note was for a sucker. Like now, not for a sucker, but for someone of better higher income. But for someone of a modest income, a car note is like it's a money trap. Because like I said, anything happens to that car and that's all your money you're gonna spend on either repairing or replacing it. Now you're gonna be broke. So I knew not to fall into the trap of a car note. But I did almost buy a high end, a high end used car. Luckily I didn't. Spent that on traveling. That's been my motto ever since. That's why I never deemed to buy a car. I'm like now I'm gonna buy a car over there for Mrs. Contrarian. Um, but did yeah, once I started traveling, I had lost interest in getting a car because I was like, I'm fine with public transportation because I'm not trying to meet anyone here. I've already met someone there, right? Um, and like, so I didn't have any of the things that these guys did, which is why I could travel. Like I said, I didn't have a car note or an exorbitant rent to pay. Didn't, um, sorry, mortgage or exorbitant rate rent to pay. Didn't have a car note. Didn't have a vehicle, which would have required gas, insurance, maintenance. Um, I didn't buy expensive clothing. Like I pretty much wore my, and I still do. I wear my clothing until it goes ragged, and then I replace it. I don't care about being trendy with. I don't care. As long as it's well fitting, as long as it's clean and well fitting, that's what I care about. Like, and here's the secret, guys. If you're physically fit, everything looks good on you. That's the secret. When you're when you're a fat fuck, then you gotta worry about looking good in your clothing. When you're physically fit, everything looks good on you. Look, case in point, Wolverine. Wolverine dresses in the most basic shit that you can ever wear. You ever seen what Wolverine wears? He either wears like a wife beater, a white tee with some Levi's blue jeans, and sometimes he'll wear like a button down, a basic button down shirt, um, and wear like a and like when he's fancy, he'll wear a leather jacket and a hat and a cowboy hat. That's about as fancy as Wolverine gets. But every chick wants him because he's physically fit and he looks good, right? So when you are physically fit and you're attractive, you don't need to wear expensive clothes to attract women. Because at the end of the day, the, the square and the popular guy are boning the same chick, except one did it for a lot less money. That's game for you guys, for you younger guys. At the end of the day, the dude with wearing thousands of dollars of jewelry and clothing is smashing the same chick that the so-called lame is, except the lame didn't have to pay as much money to do so. And these unks trying to look like those younger dudes are lame for not because of how they dress, because they don't dress, not because they dress cheaply, but because they're trying to dress like these young guys trying to peacock. You're too old to be trying to peacock. Like I said, my peacock phase was in college and high school. After that, give it up. It's like going into grad school and working, I was not peacocking anymore. Like I said, for me, I'm most comfortable wearing like a graphic T-shirt with like a Batman or Avengers on it, with some fitted jeans and like some shoes or boots. And then I might wear like a leather jacket or something like that. But I don't go out looking like a YN. When I travel, I'm not going to red light districts looking looking for pay for play, which is fine if you are, but you shouldn't be going to pay for play spots looking for real relationships. That doesn't make sense. These women are pay for play. Now, if you're an elderly man, that may be your only option, but understand that it's going to be pay for play. You can't be saying all these women are gold diggers just because you are no longer attractive to younger women. Like if you are in your 60s and 70s, maybe even 80s, that door has closed on you. You can still get a real relationship. You're just gonna have to up the age. So, like I was trying to tell Kat, because she keeps thinking I'm women bashing. I'm not women bashing. I'm bashing on delusional people, and that's of either sex. Like I said, just like older women are delusional because they can they think that the type that they can attract a certain mate that they could when they were younger, that's delusional. And I never said that women are defined by men. That was a straw man. Neither yesterday or nor today I've ever said that. Nor did I say that all women have all women have to settle. Again, that was not what I said. I said women who hit the wall have to be more realistic. They call it settling down because they refuse to accept that they don't have the same options as a 21-year-old woman. They don't. You're in your 50s, you're a grandma now. And again, the case in point is the TV show The Golden Girls. Back in the 80s, when we were watching as little kids or teenagers, however old you may have been when you saw The Golden Girls, they looked like old women. But when you look at it now, they were in their 50s. But we thought they were old back then, as they appeared such. Um, but same thing with these men. Like you can't be walking around overseas, whether you're in Colombia or Dominican Republic or Thailand or the Philippines or Ukraine before the war, thinking that these these little young chicks want you when, like I said, you got a belly hanging over your over your belt, and you probably haven't seen your dick since Jimmy Carter was in office. I'm just saying. Um, it's just it's unrealistic. Or or like I said, you're in your 40s, 50s, and you dressing like a YN. You look ridiculous. Um, or you're a travel vlogger, maybe like in the Passport Bro movement, and you're telling younger men that they can find love in the bars with bar girls and freelancers. And I'm like, maybe that's your option, but that's not their options. These guys are younger. They can work remotely. They have options. They don't why would they settle for low value women that are prostitutes? That doesn't make sense. Um some other delusional things men do. Um or these guys who can't fight. I've talked about this a number of times. You got these guys who can't fight who try to call out professional fighters. Notice it's the professional fighters who are the most reticent to fight because they understand the unpredictability and violence of an actual fight. And you'll have these dudes who can't fight who will say, "Oh well, you know, if I see red, it's all over. If I see red, it's all over." Okay, nigga, who know? No, okay, if you see red, that just means you're gonna be easier to knock out because you cannot control yourself in the heat of the moment. But like I said, I have nothing against women. Obviously, I don't like delusional people. Losing my voice, so that's my sign I need to go. But addressing, like I said, the live stream from yesterday and a former moderator and my current moderator, like they disagree with me, but they were disagreeing on points that I didn't really make, which is that it didn't make sense. Like one of them, like I said, unfortunately is having an existential crisis, and she needs to talk with someone who can help her in that regards. And I wasn't trying to insult her, but I think she actually is wants to provoke me to insult her because she sees it as some sort of martyrdom that she's standing up for her religious convictions, even though it wasn't a religious debate we were having. My point in saying that a middle-aged woman still waiting around for the right man is going to be waiting around till she see Jesus. The point was that their delusional thinking in their elder years, in their golden years, that they had those same options. That was the point. And like many people have called out in the manosphere space, in the red pill space, is that only women in Western society think they have unlimited options, whereas men know better, because when they do think they have unlimited options, they will be um, they will be quickly told that that's not the case, and they, and in a very nasty manner sometimes. Like I said, these older guys walking around wearing skinny jeans, looking like YNs. Most people won't call them out on it, except for the young guys. The young guys will clown them for it. And just like some of these guys in the Passport Bro movement, I've been calling them out because they are they are they have tarnished the movement by by basically promoting sexual degeneracy. Like, and again, like I said in a previous video with a friend of mine while we were riding around in the car, I was saying, look, if you want to do your thing, do you, but not everything needs to be on Front Street. That's not something you should advertise to other people saying, hey, you guys should come out here so that you can hit everything moving like I do. Like, cool, but there's no reason to promote that like, I not everything is worth the clicks and views, especially when it leads to an ethnic image. So now, it, some of these guys have been so irresponsible that now they have spread a negative ethnic image of black men traveling overseas. They Most people assume they are sex tourists now because of these guys and their videos and the stuff they've said. I mean, it got so bad that the Vice News did a report on it, and it made the Passport Bro movement look very unflattering, which is funny because most of the people in that Vice News weren't even black. But leaving that aside, delusion knows delusion knows no gender, no age, no religious affiliation, no sexual orientation, no nationality, um, apparently no educational status, no socioeconomic status. Like, being out of touch reality can afflict anyone, and I'm just calling it out. So people get triggered, and say, "Oh, well, I'm not triggered. You're triggered. You're triggered because the way you respond to what I'm saying. You can disagree, but the fact that you will go out of your way to twist what I'm saying in some sort of straw man argument, or you will move the proverbial goalpost to something to try to catch me in an aha moment instead of sticking with the original claim or claims, it shows that you are triggered, because you wouldn't be resorting to such fallacious tactics had you not taken it personally. So that's all I'm going to say about that. And that's for the men or women, because I've had, again, men in the Passport Bro movement call me out too, saying, "Oh, you just a plantation, bro." I'm like, no, I've been actually traveling longer than you, and also, unlike you, I'm not socially awkward. I can get women, and I'm physically fit and was, at least, if not still now, conventionally attractive to some women. So I, you know, I don't have the ugly man syndrome that some of you have going overseas. So that's where I'm going to leave it, guys. It's way past my bedtime, and I'm losing my voice, as you can hear. So if you want to leave comments, if you're watching this broadcast on replay, feel free to do so. If you disagree with me, that is fine, but obey the rules of the comment section. Be civil. Attack the argument, not the person. Okay. Um, if you do want to support what I say and do here, You can always leave me a super thanks, or the links in my description. I have my Cash App, or you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. So I drink a lot of coffee. So that's it, guys. Thank you for watching. Again, looked like I had to crash out again because people keep taking what I'm saying and distorting it. And I will rationally defend what I say if I think I'm right. If I don't, I will admit it. I've issued mea culpas before. So there you go. Guys, you like my Batman turtleneck? Take care.